Helen took me by the hand as she pushed the doorbell. It was about 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon when a tall, blonde woman opened the door and greeted her warmly. This was Helga, poised, confident, and known for helping people explore new sides of themselves. I was to stay with her for the next month, a time set aside for me to reflect on my future and decide what kind of life I wanted to live. This was going to be an important month because the choices I made here would stay with me forever. Helen and Helga chatted for a few minutes before embracing goodbye. Then Helga turned to me, her eyes sharp and assessing. "Go to the room across the hall, change out of your everyday clothes, and wait for me there," she said calmly. My hands trembled as I obeyed. I placed my clothes neatly into the basket provided and sat on my knees, unsure of what lay ahead. I was tall, well-built, but uncertain about myself. Would I hold on to the life I knew or step into something new entirely? After nearly an hour, Helga entered the room. "Good," she said. "You followed instructions and waited. That tells me you're ready for structure. You have a side of you that craves discipline, and together we'll explore it. Now come here." She guided me across the room and explained that discipline would be part of my daily routine. It wasn't cruelty, but a system of structure designed to test me, to see how serious I was about transformation. Her presence was commanding. She wore a leather-accented outfit that emphasized authority, her hair pulled back sharply, her movements confident. Every detail about her made it clear she was in control. I obeyed, nervous but determined. She began my first lesson with a firm correction, and though it stung, I forced myself to stay still. The message was clear. Here, I had to surrender control in order to discover who I really was. When the lesson ended, I was nearly in tears, not from pain alone, but from the weight of the moment. This was only the beginning. "Back on your knees," Helga instructed. She left briefly, then returned with a set of restraints, not cruel, but symbolic, a way of ensuring I moved at her pace. With measured authority, she led me downstairs to her basement. There were 2 main rooms. The first, which she called her training space, was filled with carefully arranged tools and furnishings. It was an environment designed to challenge me, a place where every detail had a purpose. She guided me inside, locked me into a low cage, and left me there with only a dim light. I crawled inside and sat, reflecting. I had never been in such a place before. My mind spun as I stared at the shelves, the furniture, the atmosphere that radiated authority. What had I agreed to? The decision to come here was my own, and once I crossed that threshold, the understanding was clear. I would remain for the full month. Hours passed. I grew tired and eventually drifted into restless sleep. The next morning, Helga returned. She released me, allowed me water and a shower, and then provided food. Her discipline was balanced by care, strict rules, but clear guidance. "Today will be important," she said. "But first, you must learn the rules of this house. Any breach will carry consequences, but if you follow them, you will grow." She laid them out plainly. Always address her as Mistress Helga, never speak without permission, and always show respect by bowing whenever entering her presence. "Do you understand?" she asked. "Yes," I replied quietly. I thought it was the right answer, but I would soon learn that mistakes, even small ones, had consequences in this house. "Sissy, didn't I just tell you to call me Mistress Helga at all times?" Over my knee now. Quickly. I moved as fast as the shackles allowed, and the correction that followed left me shaking and in tears. My bottom throbbed from the lesson. Helga led me into the deeper part of the training space and secured me to a frame in a spread posture. The restraints were clinical and immovable, part of the ritual she used to make the rules unmistakable. "Part of this training," she said in her even, unyielding voice, "is learning restraint. You will learn to accept control and to ask for release only when given permission. Punishment and reward go hand in hand. They teach you where your boundaries are." She brought out a small, carefully packaged set of equipment designed to limit movement and remove temptation. Her tone was practical, almost maternal, and she explained each item with methodical calm. Everything had a purpose and a place in the regimen she had prepared. "You were measured precisely," Helga said softly, "so the fittings should be right. She adjusted straps and buckles with exacting care, checking alignment and comfort as if fitting a professional uniform rather than preparing someone for humiliation. When she finished, I could only breathe. The sensations were disorienting, equal parts vulnerability and strange reassurance. Helga moved about the room, testing that the setup worked, observing how I shifted and adapted. I felt exposed, but strangely cared for, as if every precaution she'd taken existed to keep me safe while demanding obedience. She released me from the frame and clipped the leash back to my collar. We walked slowly through the dungeon so she could assess how I moved with the new restrictions in place. It was awkward at first, but Helga seemed pleased with the way I learned to adapt fast. "Follow me," she said, and led me into the adjacent room. It was a surprising contrast to the stern training space, a nursery-like chamber, arranged with immaculate care. The cupboards were lined with soft garments, padded clothing, and comforting items, everything organized down to a color code. In one corner stood a cot with a waterproof mattress cover, neat bedding tucked in as if for a child, though the whole setup felt clinical rather than childish. "This is your living space while you're here," Helga explained. "When you aren't training, you will sleep and rest here. The routines you follow will help you learn how to live within structure." She guided me up onto a changing table and, though my heart beat fast, I complied. She smoothed a soft protective layer beneath me and adjusted a snug, institutional garment around my waist, practical, secure, and designed for containment rather than spectacle. She powdered and dressed me with quiet efficiency, every movement precise and calm. She added a simple coverall, trimmed in pale colors and fastened at the back. Mittens and booties followed. A soft bonnet completed the outfit. The garments muffled my movements and softened the edges of the world. Tiny bells on the anklets and bracelets chimed faintly when I shifted. Helga said they were so she could always hear where I was. "You'll be kept comfortable," she said, "but you will also be mindful of your place. You will practice basic skills, dressing and undressing dolls, using the small potty when permitted, and following instructions exactly. You will carry a dummy while you're in the playpen. It anchors you to the routine and calms you during longer sessions." She fitted a lightweight harness over my shoulders and buckled it snugly across my chest and waist. I stuck my arms through and felt the harness secure me gently but firmly. Then she instructed me to crawl rather than stand. I obeyed. My shackled feet scraped the floor as I made my way, the bells chiming with each movement. Helga set me down in a playpen, the chain clipped to my collar and anchored to the wall within arm's reach. The playpen was a contained space with soft toys, a few dolls, and the tasks she had prescribed. "You remain here for the day," she said. "You will rest, practice your tasks, and accept the limits placed on you. I will check in regularly, and you must keep the dummy in your mouth when instructed. Learning calm and submission is part of the process." "Yes, Mistress Helga," I whispered, the words small but earnest. She left me there to the hush of the room, the distant sounds of her business at work, calls, notes, the measured click of a clock. Alone with my thoughts, the training felt less like spectacle and more like a strict, carefully ordered regimen meant to remold me. I struggled with humiliation, but beneath it was a curious peace, the kind that comes when someone else carries the burden of choice and you are allowed, forced even, to simply be. Helga left me alone for hours in the nursery. I did my best to pass the time, carefully dressing and undressing the dolls she had given me as practice. Finally, she returned, carrying a tray with a baby's bottle and a plate of warm food. After tying a bib around my neck, she fed me patiently, spoon by spoon, before handing me the bottle. The formula was sweet and warm, almost comforting, and when she saw I finished quickly, she refilled it without a word. "You've been a very good girl so far, sweetie," she said with surprising gentleness. "Now you may rest." Exhaustion swept over me, and I lay back as she tucked a knitted blanket around my shoulders. I drifted off almost immediately, lulled by the sense of safety her presence gave me. When I woke, the room was dim, and I stirred uneasily. The soft bells on my wrists gave me away, and Helga entered almost immediately. "What is it, dear?" she asked. "I need to go to the bathroom, mistress," I whispered. She shook her head firmly. "No. You'll remain as you are. Learning to accept your conditions is part of your training. It was humiliating, but there was nothing I could do. Yet instead of scolding me, Helga smiled warmly. There's no shame here. You're under my care. That's what matters. Later, she changed me into a mauve nightdress and led me back to the cot, where she secured the side rails. Though the restraints were removed for the night, she promised they would be back in place in the morning. I curled beneath the covers, strangely grateful for the balance of strictness and care she provided. This became my daily rhythm. Each morning began with discipline, then routines of bathing, dressing, and long stretches of solitary reflection. While Helga attended to her business, I stayed in my confined space, given tasks to complete and time to think. And though the days were repetitive, I realized they were also reshaping me. When Saturday arrived, Helga surprised me. You've done well, she said. Today your restrictions will be lightened. She led me into her bedroom and instructed me to wait. She returned dressed in a flowing robe, her presence commanding as ever. To my surprise, she wasn't alone. Another woman, Serena, followed her in. This is Serena, Helga said. She's here to assist with your training. Serena smiled at me kindly, and the two of them spent the evening guiding me through a new layer of my role. It wasn't about humiliation or pain this time. It was about connection, trust, and learning to let go under their watchful care. That night, I slept between them, not as a partner, but as a pupil safe between two mentors. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. We sat together after dinner, the TV murmuring in the background. After a while, my partner noticed I was quiet and asked what was wrong. I tried to say nothing, but she could tell I wasn't being honest and gently kept asking until I finally broke down and told her I'd been miserable at work, that people had been cruel to me all week. I couldn't hold back the tears. She didn't scold me. Instead, she took my hand, guided me up the stairs, and asked me to sit with her while she got ready for bed. I sat on the edge of the bed as she changed into something soft and comforting, a pale robe that smelled faintly of lavender. Come sit with me, love, she said, patting the space beside her. Tell me what's on your mind. I curled up next to her, and she wrapped an arm around my shoulders. The closeness made something inside me loosen, the ache of the day, the knot of shame I'd been carrying. She stroking my hair, and the quiet steadiness of her voice were soothing in a way I hadn't expected. Does that help a bit? She asked, smiling. I nodded. I hadn't realized how much I needed that simple comfort. We talked for a long time. She listened, offered calm advice, and reminded me of things I'd forgotten about myself, that I was stronger than the taunts, that I didn't have to face everything alone. When I grew quiet again, she didn't press. She stayed close, and after a while she kissed my forehead and tucked me in. If this ever happens again, she said, come to me first. We'll get through it together. I felt safe. The evening wasn't about drama or escape. It was about being seen and soothed. The next morning, I woke steadier than I had in days, and a small part of the panic that had made my world so small began to loosen. I woke early the next morning after a surprisingly good night's sleep, feeling steadier than I had in weeks. It was Saturday, and I had a club football match in a few hours, so I hurried to make breakfast and carried the tray back to the bedroom. She smiled when I brought it in, kissed my cheek, and said, "Good morning." Her warmth felt like an anchor. "I love you," she said softly. "I love you too," I replied, and for a moment the world felt small and safe.